My monthly pension was $5,600, and $4,000 of it went straight to my son, to ensure my grandson Tyler's education would be secure. But it wasn't until that day when I ran into my son's mother-in-law, Shirley, while shopping that I stumbled upon the truth. My hard-earned money had been nothing more than pocket cash for Jason and his wife to splurge on luxury goods. Just last month, Jason had even bought Shirley a brand-new LV handbag. What broke my heart even more was realizing that Tyler was left waiting after school with no one to pick him up. It was then I understood. I had been living a lie for years. And when I finally decided to take everything back, their retaliation came just as swiftly. Did they really think I was that easy to fool? The autumn sunlight streamed through the living room windows, scattering across the hardwood floors like flecks of gold. But no matter how brightly it shone, it couldn't warm the chill in my heart. My name is Helen Brooks. I'm 68 years old, a retired teacher from a middle school in San Francisco. My husband passed away young, leaving me to raise our only son Jason all by myself. Now Jason has built a life of his own. He's married to Amanda and they have a little boy, Tyler. The four of us have been crammed into the old house my husband and I bought decades ago. 3 generations under one roof sounds lively, even heartwarming, but the real taste of it only I knew. I spent a lifetime teaching and nurturing others. I wouldn't say I had students across the world, but I could hold my head high knowing I did my best. After retirement, my pension gave me a modest but comfortable living in this expensive Bay Area city. Watching Jason hustle day in and day out as an engineer, and Amanda quitting her job supposedly to focus on raising Tyler, my heart softened. Thinking of how tough life was for young families these days, with daycare, after-school activities and endless expenses, I offered to contribute. From the day Tyler was born, I promised to set aside $4,000 from my pension every month to help support them. At first, Amanda pretended to decline, but soon enough it became routine. Every time I handed her an envelope of cash, she'd beam at me and say, "Helen, you really ought to treat yourself better. Stop worrying about us so much." Her smile was as sweet as honey, but her eyes were shallow, like sunlight skimming over water, never warm enough to touch the heart. Over time I began to see it more clearly. Amanda was never rude to me. She was polite, even attentive in public. She'd serve me food at the dinner table and brag to the neighbors about what a thoughtful mother-in-law she had. But it was all surface, like a porcelain glaze, shiny and flawless but fragile underneath. One tap and it would shatter. She never asked about my health. She never really talked to me about anything that mattered. Even when I was visibly down, she would offer a token word or two and move on. It was as if there was a sheet of glass between us, transparent but impenetrable. I wasn't blind to the distance. The orchid on my balcony bloomed each spring with a little care, offering its fragrance in return. Yet all my love and sacrifices yielded nothing but cold, calculated performances. Sometimes at night I sat by the window staring at the distant city lights, a heavy, damp sadness pressing against my chest. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. Young people had their own lives. As long as Jason was doing well, as long as Tyler was happy and healthy, what did it matter if I was a little lonely? Blood doesn't automatically translate into love, I often reminded myself silently. No matter how much I give, it may never be enough to forge real closeness. And so, I swallowed the hurt, the helplessness, the sighs, choking them all down until they became part of me. The days passed, colorless and slow. My entire life seemed to revolve around Tyler. He was a bright, lively little boy, the apple of my eye. Ever since he started preschool, it fell to me to handle pickups and drop-offs. Amanda was busy with housework, Jason was drowning in work, and household chores they said were just too much. Fine. Picking Tyler up every day, watching him race toward me with his tiny backpack, throwing himself into my arms, calling out "Grandma," in that sweet high-pitched voice, that alone made everything worth it. Every afternoon at 3 o'clock, rain or shine, I stood at the school gate, waiting. And when Tyler hugged my legs and laughed, every frustration and worry melted away. His tuition, his after-school classes, his clothes, his toys, I paid for nearly everything. Amanda would often sigh dramatically, painting a picture of endless financial strain. "Mom," she'd say, frowning, "Tyler's piano classes are due again. And his art teacher said he needs new paints." Without hesitation I would pull out my checkbook. "Don't worry about it. We can't cut corners on his education. If you need more, just ask." All I cared about was giving Tyler the best shot at a bright future. I felt for Jason. Shouldering a whole family's burdens was no easy task. And I felt even more for Tyler, hoping he could rise higher than any of us ever had. Taking care of them became my purpose, my pride. Sure, sometimes seeing Amanda treat herself to new clothes or fancy cosmetics with the money I gave her stung a little. But I reason with myself. If pampering herself made her happy, maybe the whole household would be a bit more cheerful too. A grandparent's love is pure giving. But when the younger generation starts expecting it as a right, that love turns sour. I often thought with a bitter smile, quietly bracing myself for more. I believed that as long as I kept giving, kept sacrificing, I could hold this family together and shield Tyler with love. I couldn't have been more wrong. It all shattered one ordinary weekend. The sun was bright that morning. I decided to head to the mall to pick up a new pair of spring shoes for Tyler. The place was bustling, alive with chatter and color. I was browsing the children's section when a sharp, familiar voice caught my ear, half laughing, half boasting. I turned and spotted Shirley Davis, Amanda's mother, holding court at a lounge area nearby. She was decked out in a flashy dress, a heavy gold necklace glittering around her neck, a stark contrast to my plain outfit. Oblivious to my presence, she kept on, her voice carrying clearly. "Lily, you won't believe it. My Amanda hit the jackpot. Her mother-in-law's a total fool, set in her ways, easy to trick. She hands them $4,000 every month, says it's for the kids' schooling. Who buys that?" Each word hit me like a shard of ice, freezing me in place. And that $4,000? They blow it however they want. Last month Jason got me an LV purse. This month Amanda's eyeing a mink vest. I told her, "Girl, you gotta enjoy yourself. What's the old lady gonna do? Take it to her grave." Shirley burst out laughing, loud and crude, a laugh so full of scorn it felt like knives digging into my chest. An LV purse? A mink vest? $4,000. Just disposable income to flaunt around? All this time I had scrimped and saved, stressing over every dollar, thinking I was investing in Tyler's future. Meanwhile, to them I was just a gullible cash cow. My ears rang. My head spun. Shame, rage, heartbreak, all coiled inside me like venomous snakes, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I stumbled backward, clutching a tiny shoe in my hand as if it were the only thing keeping me upright. So that's what I am to them. An easy mark. A fool. The realization cut deep, each thought a jagged blade slowly carving me apart from the inside. I don't even remember how I made it out of the mall. My legs were weak, the world blindingly bright and yet unbearably cold. Shirley's bright red lips and triumphant grin haunted my mind, her words echoing over and over, each repetition another slow, merciless wound. Back home, I locked the door behind me and collapsed into a chair, too numb to move for a long time. Years of hard work and devotion had been repaid with betrayal and mockery. The mirror reflected a face carved with the deep lines of time, and somehow, the wrinkles seemed even more pronounced tonight. I had spent my life teaching, living with integrity, never wronging anyone. Yet in the end it was my own family who turned me into a joke. I couldn't let it end like this. As I slowly calmed down, I told myself I had to stay rational. I needed to uncover the full truth, and gather irrefutable proof. I pretended nothing had happened. I cooked, cleaned, and kept a gentle smile on my face, but inside I was building a fortress. My eyes sharpened, turning cold and watchful like a hawk circling its prey. I started observing Amanda carefully. And sure enough, she was constantly glued to her phone lately, smirking at the screen. Delivery boxes piled up at the front door, one after another. When I opened those fancy packages, it was always the same: luxury skincare products, expensive clothes, designer handbags. That shiny LV bag she carried nearly every day, the finely tailored cashmere sweater. It was obvious these weren't purchases a typical middle-class family could afford on a whim. In the past, I would have naively comforted myself, thinking maybe Jason had bought her a gift out of love, or perhaps Amanda had saved up for months to treat herself. But after hearing Shirley's words, every indulgence Amanda flaunted now burned my eyes, stinging with cruel irony. She was spending recklessly, shamelessly, without a hint of the financial strain she always whined about. Whatever shred of hope I had left crumbled to dust. Rage grew wild inside me, threatening to tear me apart. But I clenched my teeth and forced myself to stay calm. No sudden moves, no tipping them off. I would get undeniable evidence. I would drag everything into the light where no lies could hide. Old doesn't mean stupid, I thought coldly. It just means we've been too patient, too willing to preserve the peace. But if you've decided to tear off the mask first, I told myself, my heart hardening, then don't blame this old lady for fighting back without mercy. When I thought about Tyler, a new wave of anger surged inside me. Amanda always claimed she stayed home to care for him, but Shirley's words painted a very different picture. Picking Tyler up, paying for his tuition, it had all been on me. So what exactly was Amanda doing every day? Where, besides luxury goods, was the $4,000 I handed over each month really going? And most important of all, did she even truly care about Tyler's safety? A thought slowly took root in my mind. I had to see the truth for myself. That evening, I casually told Amanda that I had an appointment the next day and wouldn't be able to pick Tyler up from school. I asked her if she could handle it instead. She agreed quickly, without hesitation. The next afternoon, I left an hour earlier than usual without telling anyone, slipping out like a detective. I found a hidden spot near Tyler's school and waited. His class was scheduled to be dismissed at 3 o'clock. As usual, the teacher would bring the children to the school gate for the parents to pick up. Minutes ticked by. The school entrance buzzed with life as kids poured out like little birds escaping a cage, laughing and chattering. My heart pounded in my chest as I scanned the crowd, straining to find Tyler. Then I spotted him, wearing his blue backpack, standing alone at the edge of the gate. His small figure looked even more fragile surrounded by the lively chaos. Parents came and went, scooping up their children, and gradually the crowd thinned. Tyler craned his neck, peering around desperately, his face full of disappointment and helplessness. It felt like someone had clenched their hand around my heart, squeezing it tight until it ached. Still, I forced myself to stay hidden. I needed to see if anyone would actually come for him. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Tyler was the only child left standing by the gate. The school security guard approached him and said a few words. Tyler shook his head, slung his backpack over his little shoulders, and began walking home, all by himself, dragging his feet along the sidewalk. My heart jumped into my throat. He wasn't even 7 years old yet. Tiny, vulnerable, walking along busy streets full of cars and strangers. The dangers were endless. I couldn't bear to think about it another second. I rushed after him. Tyler! I called out loudly. He turned, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. But almost immediately his smile faded and he lowered his head. His voice wobbled with a hint of hurt. "Grandma, what took you so long?" I knelt down and ruffled his hair, my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I got held up today. Didn't your mom tell you she was supposed to pick you up?" Tyler tilted his head thoughtfully, then said in his sweet, innocent voice, "Mom said she had to go get pretty, and told me to be careful. She said you gave her money so she could go get beauty treatments and that once she's prettier she can make lots of money." Beauty treatments? Facials? Making money? I froze, unable to process what I was hearing. Amanda had been taking my hard-earned money not just to buy luxury goods, but to spend her days at salons? And worse, she was feeding a child this garbage, twisting the truth into some absurd justification? I clenched my teeth, swallowing the flood of rage surging up inside me. My voice was tight when I asked, "So, were you planning to walk all the way home by yourself today?" Tyler nodded proudly. "Uh-huh. Mom told me this morning that I'm a big boy now and can walk home alone. She said the teacher taught us to watch the stoplights and not talk to strangers." I remembered everything. He puffed out his tiny chest, looking up at me with shining eyes, waiting for praise. My heart shattered. Such a small child, sent off alone, expected to navigate traffic and strangers like it was no big deal. Amanda hadn't thought twice? The world blurred at the edges and I had to fight to keep my balance. Anger, heartbreak, sorrow, all roared inside me, threatening to consume everything. I had once naively believed that even if Amanda was vain, even if she lusted after luxury, she would at least have a shred of instinctive love for her own child. Reality slapped me hard across the face. If she had only stolen my money, I might have forgiven her. But putting Tyler's life at risk, crossing that line? Unforgivable. "You can scam me," I thought coldly, "but you do not gamble with a child's safety. Ever." I had spent 40 years of my life teaching, and if there was one thing I could never stand, it was adults who shirked their responsibility to protect children. Right then, right there, I made my decision. This charade, they had so carefully constructed, was going to end. I held Tyler's small, cold hand as we walked home step by step. The setting sun stretched our shadows long across the pavement, and the smell of dinner wafted from the neighbors' houses. But the chill inside me was colder than the late autumn air. When we got home, Amanda was sprawled across the living room couch, a thick mask slathered on her face as she lazily scrolled through her phone. She glanced up briefly when she saw me walking in with Tyler, visibly startled for a moment, but quickly slipped back into her usual slouch, barely lifting her head. "Helen, why are you so late getting back?" she asked casually, her voice indifferent, the mask doing nothing to hide the dismissiveness underneath. I didn't react right away. I stayed calm, helping Tyler out of his backpack, pouring him a glass of warm water and making sure he was settled. Then I walked over to the sofa and stood in front of her. My voice was steady, almost too steady. "Amanda, I picked Tyler up from school today." She froze. Her fingers trembled slightly as her eyes darted from the phone to me, a flicker of panic flashing across her face. "Oh, did you?" she stammered, forcing a casual tone. I wasn't feeling well today, so I didn't go." "Not feeling well?" I repeated slowly, a cold smile tugging at my lips. "You mean you were too exhausted after getting pretty at the salon?" Amanda shot up from the couch as if stung, tearing the mask off her face. Her cheeks were flushed, whether from guilt or anger, it didn't matter anymore. "You're lying. I didn't go to any salon," she shrieked, her voice climbing higher, desperate to drown out the truth. I met her gaze head-on, my words as sharp and cold as steel. "Tyler told me everything. He said you go to the beauty salon every day. That today was no different, that you told him to walk home alone because you had to get your treatments." I paused, letting the silence stretch and twist between us, before my voice dropped even lower. "Amanda, you took the money I gave you, money meant for my grandson's future, and used it to pamper yourself. And worse, you abandoned your own child. Tell me, does your conscience not ache even a little?" My accusations sliced straight through the facade she had so carefully built. Her face twisted with rage, the panic gone, replaced by ugly defiance. She leapt toward me like a cornered animal, screeching, "What I do is none of your damn business. You're just a freeloading old hag. You think you can boss me around?" She jabbed her finger in my face, her words dripping with venom. "So what if I spend your money? That's your useless son's fault. If he could actually support his family, you wouldn't even be needed." I stared at her, feeling nothing but deep, exhausted disgust. All those years of patience, of understanding, of silent sacrifice, worthless in her eyes. All my giving had been twisted into some kind of debt I owed her. I drew a deep breath, pushing the rising fury down into a hard, cold place. My voice was iron when I spoke. "Since you see it that way," I said, "then hear this. Starting next month, you won't see a single cent from me." "You always thought I was easy to fool," I thought bitterly. "But at my age I've seen too much. Your little games are laughably small to me." My coldness hit harder than any shouting could have. Amanda stood stunned for a second, then went berserk, charging at me, her voice shattering the air. "What did you just say? No more money?" She flailed her arms wildly, shrieking, "Helen Brooks, if you won't pay, then get the hell out of this house. We're not keeping dead weight here. Get out." I straightened my spine, a deadly calm settling over me. The years of humiliation, the mountain of bitterness, all of it crystallized into one unshakable resolve. I looked her dead in the eye. "Amanda, maybe you forgot," I said, each word slicing like a blade, "but the deed to this house still has my name on it. And my late husband's." I took a slow step closer, my stare cutting into her. "This is my house. You have no right to tell me to leave." It was like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over her. Amanda, who had just been screeching and spitting venom, suddenly shrank back, her bravado collapsing into wide-eyed panic. It had never crossed her mind. This old, soft-hearted woman she thought she could control actually held the true power over everything she took for granted. "You might have forgotten," I thought grimly, "but before you start throwing people out, you better check who really owns the ground you're standing on." Just then the front door creaked open. Jason walked in, looking drained from another long day at work. Amanda's eyes flickered. In a flash, she threw herself into his arms, sobbing theatrically. "Jason, you have to talk to your mother." She's gone crazy. She's cutting us off. She wants to throw me out. How are we supposed to live like this? Jason froze, staring helplessly between the two of us. His brow furrowed so deeply it looked like it might never smooth out again. Mom? What's going on? He asked quietly, his voice low and pleading, desperate to defuse the tension. A coldness spread through me. Seeing the uncertainty in my son's eyes, I bit the inside of my cheek hard, forcing down the scream rising in my throat. Then calmly and clearly I told him everything, the whole ugly truth. How Amanda had taken the money I gave for Tyler's future and wasted it on herself. How she had left our little boy to wander the streets alone. Every detail sharp and unforgiving. I laid it all bare because if there was even a sliver of fairness left in Jason's heart, I needed him to see it. When I finished, he just stood there, silent, rubbing his hands together nervously, his face twisted in agony and defeat. He glanced at me. He glanced at Amanda, whose tearful glare was now laced with thinly veiled threats. Finally, Jason sighed, a sound so broken it barely seemed human. Mom, I know you've done so much for us. I know. His voice cracked. But Amanda, she didn't mean any harm. Maybe she just made a mistake. Could you just let it go this once? He hesitated, then added, almost begging, please, Mom. Keep helping us. For Tyler's sake. For the family. So we can all live in peace. Peace. Was that what he called it? Using my money, my dignity to patch together a family held up by lies and betrayal? I stared at Jason's worn, defeated face, and felt my heart splinter into pieces. Pity for his weakness. Rage at his blindness. Oh, the heartache of a parent, I thought bitterly. I raised a son with my own 2 hands, and failed to teach him how to stand like a man. I closed my eyes, shutting him out, feeling a wave of profound exhaustion swallow me whole. Early the next morning, before I could even recover from last night's crushing disappointment, the doorbell began ringing furiously, like someone was trying to break it. When I opened the door, there she was, Shirley Davis, barging in with all the fury of a storm, dragging behind her the perpetually awkward and silent figure of Leonard Davis. Shirley didn't even bother taking off her shoes. She stormed right up to me, hands on her hips, jabbing her finger in my face as she shrieked, Helen Brooks. You old hag. What do you think you're doing? Think Amanda doesn't have backup now? I'm telling you, if you dare cut off her money, we'll make sure she divorces Jason. And we'll take Tyler with us too. Her voice was shrill and vicious, spit flying with every word. Leonard hovered awkwardly behind her, shifting from foot to foot but saying nothing. Amanda stood smugly behind her mother, her face practically screaming, see? My mom's here now. Faced with this sudden onslaught, I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. No shouting. No arguing. I simply leaned against the doorframe, watching Shirley's vulgar performance unfold, the corner of my mouth curling into a faint, mocking smile. Meanwhile, my hand slid discreetly into my pocket, and with a light press, I started recording the entire scene on my phone. Perfect, I thought coldly. If they're going to deliver this spectacle to my doorstep, I might as well preserve every last disgraceful word. Oh, divorce. Take Tyler. I repeated slowly, my voice flat, emotionless. Shirley, you really shouldn't say things like that. Kidnapping a child is a crime, you know. Shirley stumbled for a second, thrown off by my composure, but quickly recovered and shrieked even louder. Crime? Please. We'll make it look good. We'll say you abused my daughter. Abused my grandson. We'll destroy your reputation. Ruin you. I almost laughed. Abuse? Such easy accusations so cheaply thrown around. You think I'm so easy to scare? I thought with a bitter smile. These little games are nothing to me. I said nothing. I just let the phone in my pocket record every word, every threat, every nasty accusation. Shirley, seeing that her tirade wasn't breaking me, stomped her foot and spat. You've got 3 days, Helen. 3 days to hand over the money and keep it coming. Otherwise, don't blame us for what happens. She shot me one last venomous glare, grabbed Leonard by the arm, and with Amanda smirking at her side, stormed out the door. The moment it slammed shut, the house fell into a silence so complete, I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator. Jason stood nearby, pale as a sheet. His mouth opened, closed, opened again as if he wanted to say something. But in the end he just dropped his head and slunk away into his room without a word. I was left standing alone in the empty living room. And so began the next phase of Amanda's petty revenge. She stopped cleaning the shared spaces, letting trash bags pile up by the door until the sour smell clung to the air. When I cooked, she would saunter by and deliberately dump the food straight into the garbage, smirking and sneering. "Wow, you still have money for groceries. I thought you were broke already." But I didn't give them what they wanted. I didn't beg. I didn't break down. I quietly washed my own dishes. I went to the store alone. I cooked for myself. When the shared spaces turned filthy, I simply kept to my room and cleaned only my own bathroom and living space. I even began packing my things in secret, carefully folding clothes, boxing up old books, preparing for the day when I would leave on my own terms. My pension wasn't much, but it would be enough. Enough for a small apartment, or maybe a modest place in a nearby retirement community. Enough for me to live simply but freely. It's only now at this stage of life, I thought, that I finally understand between money and family, only one can truly be relied upon. I was old, yes, but I would rather live humbly and with dignity than continue sacrificing myself for some hollow idea of family harmony. This war they had started, I would see it through to the end. When Amanda realized her silent treatment wasn't working, she escalated. She began spreading rumors around the neighborhood, that I was mentally unstable, that I abused my grandson, that I hoarded money while starving her, the poor suffering daughter-in-law. And it worked. Neighbors who used to greet me with smiles now crossed the street to avoid me. Whispers followed me down the leafy paths of the community. I could feel the prickling judgment in every sideways glance. That isolation, that quiet, creeping social death, it cut deeper than any insult screamed to my face. I had lived my entire life clean and upright. Reputation had always mattered to me. And now, overnight, I had become that woman, the crazy, abusive old woman no one wanted around. Was I hurt? Of course. Was I angry? Of course. But I knew better than to waste my breath crying or explaining to people who had already decided what to believe. I clenched my teeth and forced myself to stay calm. They thought they could wear me down. That they could surround me with whispers, turn the community against me and make me surrender. But they were wrong. I would not give them the satisfaction. I sought out the one former colleague I trusted most, Susan Carter. She was well-connected, sharp, and most importantly, she had an unerring sense for right and wrong. I selectively told her about the situation at home, especially Amanda's mysterious afternoon disappearances, and asked if she could quietly keep an eye out for me. Rumors die in the face of wisdom, I thought coldly. But sadly, wisdom is rare in today's world. Since they chose this path, they'll have to face whatever comes their way. It didn't take long. One evening, as I sat in the living room with a novel open but barely read, Susan appeared at my door with a thick manila folder. She lowered her voice, setting the heavy envelope on my lap. "Helen, I got some things. Brace yourself." I froze for a second, then slowly opened the folder. Photos slipped out one by one. Amanda in the gym's equipment area, leaning far too close to a young trainer, her smile coy and flirtatious. Amanda in a coffee shop, practically draped over the man's shoulder. Amanda, the two of them side by side, walking into a high-end apartment building. My vision darkened. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. My hands trembled as I picked up one of the photos. Felt like something had wrapped around my heart and was squeezing, tight, relentless, unbearable. Amanda. The same woman who cried about doing it all for Tyler, who pleaded poverty and struggle, wasn't just squandering the money I'd scraped together. She was cheating. I clenched my teeth until my jaw ached, my knuckles turning white from the force of it. Fury, humiliation, heartbreak. Each crashed into me like violent waves, drowning me over and over. It was a long time before I could gather the photos into a neat stack and whisper, "Can you get more detailed information? Financial records, gym membership logs." Susan nodded. "Already in progress. I'll get them to you as soon as I can." I closed my eyes, forcing the fury down into the pit of my stomach, and said, my voice low but steely, "Thank you, Susan. This time, I won't back down." I locked myself in my bedroom, breathing deep, willing my heart to slow its frantic hammering. I knew one thing clearly: blind rage would solve nothing. Amanda had shown her teeth. Now it was my turn to show mine. I picked up my phone and dialed the number Susan had given me, a retired attorney named Karen Lewis. When she answered, I laid out the situation in clear, clipped words. Karen's voice was brisk, decisive. Helen, based on what you've described, economic exploitation, child endangerment, evidence of infidelity, you have grounds to fight back. With solid proof, you can push for divorce, property division, even custody of Tyler. My throat felt raw, but my voice was steady. I want them to pay for what they've done. Then keep collecting evidence, Karen instructed. Especially anything related to Tyler's safety from the school. That will be crucial. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. From that day on, outwardly life looked the same. I cooked. I picked Tyler up from school. I smiled. But behind the scenes I was building my case, brick by careful brick. I requested Tyler's school records, documenting every instance he hadn't been picked up on time. I printed out all the bank statements showing my monthly transfers to Jason. I had Susan continue digging into Amanda's gym visits and spending habits. Every document, every photo, every recording. Each was another stone in a wall they wouldn't be able to tear down. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't shouting. I was patient. I was thorough. Because this time when I moved I would make sure Amanda and Shirley, and all their lies, came crashing down. On the surface I was still the gentle, silent old woman. Amanda lounged in the living room, a lollipop dangling from her mouth, lazily scrolling shopping apps while chatting loudly on the phone. Mom, that coat is gorgeous. Anyway, the old hag's cash cow is dried up, so Jason better work harder. Her sneering laugh sliced through the air like a knife. I walked past her with a steaming mug of coffee in my hand, my expression unchanged as if I hadn't heard a word. But in my pocket my fingers pressed gently against the recorder. Opportunities to gather evidence appeared every hour, every moment. I needed it all, not just proof of infidelity but hard, undeniable records of their arrogance, their recklessness, their contempt. The more the better. That afternoon after Amanda left the house, I locked my bedroom door and sat down at my desk, carefully organizing everything I had so far. Intimate photos at the gym, 18 images. Financial records. 4 sheets showing payments for private training and luxury expenses. School-provided late pickup records. 1 certified copy. Voice recordings with Susan detailing Amanda's activities. 2 files. I even added 1 more. Photographs of the house's shared spaces. Piles of garbage. Clear evidence of Amanda's deliberate neglect and passive aggression. Karen had warned me over the phone. Abuse isn't just physical. Emotional neglect and financial control can be equally powerful in court. I missed nothing. Not this time. This time I would be flawless. That evening, Jason came home from work, exhausted, shrugging off his jacket as he caught sight of me bustling around the kitchen. His eyes, heavy and conflicted, lingered on me for a moment. Mom, he said hesitantly from the doorway, his voice laced with a trace of guilt. Lately, Amanda's been under a lot of stress. Try not to take it to heart. I turned and gave him a gentle smile. I'm fine. Go on, don't worry about me. He seemed relieved, offering a small nod before retreating to his room. I watched his back disappear down the hallway, and my heart twisted with cold, bitter sadness. This boy I had raised with my own 2 hands, he could feel that something was wrong, yet still instinctively he chose to protect the very person who had already wounded him so deeply. But it didn't matter. Soon enough he wouldn't be able to shield her anymore. That weekend I casually suggested to Amanda, Tyler's birthday is coming up. I was thinking we could have a little family get-together. Invite your parents too. Make it festive. Amanda raised an eyebrow, her tone dripping with indifference. Sure, whatever. It's not like she has anything better to do. I tucked that reaction away quietly, noting it with precision. If everything went as planned, this family gathering would be the perfect stage for the reckoning. I made sure to extend an invitation to Susan and Karen as well, under the guise of helping to take photos for Tyler's birthday. They agreed without hesitation. Everything was quietly falling into place. Amanda and her camp thought they had already won. But they didn't realize. The true hunter never fires the first shot. The day of Tyler's birthday dawned crystal clear. I woke up early, tied on my apron, and began preparing a simple but cozy lunch. The kitchen filled with the rich aroma of roast turkey and fresh apple pie. Outside, the breeze stirred the curtains gently as if the world itself were holding its breath. Only I knew today would be anything but peaceful. Susan arrived early, her small mirrorless camera slung casually over her shoulder, blending in as she offered to help capture the birthday memories. We exchanged a brief, knowing glance, no words needed. Soon after, Karen showed up too, carrying a small wrapped gift. Dressed in plain jeans and a cozy sweater, she slipped into the crowd like any other family friend, settling quietly into a corner of the living room. Everything was ready. I suppressed the nervous tremor under my skin, keeping my hands busy in the kitchen, outwardly calm while an invisible wire stretched tighter and tighter inside me. By noon, Amanda and Shirley arrived, their heels clacking across the hardwood floor like warning shots. Shirley was draped in a garish leopard print dress, a chunky gold chain swinging around her neck. She wasted no time, her voice slicing through the room like nails on a chalkboard. Well, Helen. You actually cooked something decent today? What's the matter? Feeling generous with that money for once. Amanda snickered beside her, her face dripping with smug satisfaction. I offered a serene smile, pretending not to hear the venom dripping from Shirley's voice. I carefully plated the sliced fruit and said warmly, "Today's Tyler's birthday. Let's all just enjoy ourselves and not spoil the mood." Shirley rolled her eyes dramatically and plopped herself onto the sofa with a huff. Amanda sauntered over and curled up against Jason, her voice syrupy sweet. "Honey," she cooed, "Mom says a birthday gift has to be extravagant. Otherwise, Tyler won't be happy. There's this new kid's electric car, super expensive. Helen won't be stingy about it, will she?" Jason's face stiffened, a storm brewing behind his tired eyes. He opened his mouth as if to protest, but in the end he just nodded silently. From a distance I watched them, the way Amanda clung to him, the way Jason bowed his head, and I felt nothing. Years of sacrifice, years of giving everything for this family, met not with gratitude but with endless, shameless demands. But today they would finally learn what it meant to face real consequences. At the dining table, Susan fiddled casually with her camera, quietly switching it into video mode without drawing attention. In the corner, Karen sat flipping through a paperback novel, her expression calm, her gaze discreetly sweeping the room. On the surface, the atmosphere was lively and cheerful. Underneath, tension crackled like static in the air. Tyler came bounding over, throwing his little arms around my waist. His upturned face beamed with joy. "Grandma, I get to make 3 wishes today." I bent down, kissed his soft forehead and whispered warmly, "Go ahead, sweetheart. Just make sure you wish for what's truly important." As for me, I had only one wish left. To end all the lies and reclaim the life that was rightfully mine. The dishes were brought to the table one by one. Everyone gathered around, plates clattering, conversation buzzing. Shirley, shoveling turkey into her mouth, flashed a fake sugary grin. "Helen," she said with a theatrical chuckle, "looks like our families are tied together now, huh? We should get along nicely, don't you think?" Amanda pressed her lips into a smirk, the contempt flickering in her eyes barely hidden. Jason kept his head down, silently pushing food around his plate. I lifted my glass and smiled pleasantly. "Of course," I said, my voice syrupy smooth. "Family should stick together. Show a little kindness when we can." I paused, letting the words hang in the air, my gaze sweeping slowly across each face. "But sometimes," I continued, my voice cooling, "family also needs a little discipline." Shirley blinked, thrown off. Amanda's smile faltered. Jason shifted uncomfortably. The air grew thick, heavy with something unspoken. And in that suspended moment, I quietly clicked the recorder in my pocket. Susan's camera lens focused and captured it all. "Let's sing the birthday song for Tyler." Shirley clapped her hands, her grin painfully forced. Amanda joined in, tugging Tyler's hand back and forth at the table, her face plastered with a motherly smile. Jason, rigid and awkward, forced himself to smile too, but his eyes kept darting away from mine. I stood at the side, holding my wine glass, watching this cheap pantomime unfold under the warm lights and flickering candles. A perfect family portrait, on the surface. But today the mask would be torn off. After the song, Tyler squeezed his eyes shut and made his wishes, then beamed as I helped him cut the cake and placed the first slice carefully into his little hands. I set down the cake knife. And then quietly I picked up a small box sitting by the table, one they hadn't even noticed yet. "Jason, Amanda, Shirley, I said, my voice light, almost affectionate, as if about to tell a bedtime story. Today, besides celebrating Tyler's birthday, I thought I'd bring a little, special gift for the family. Amanda blinked, smirking. Oh, another surprise. Shirley rolled her eyes, muttering, God, don't start one of your lectures. Just get it over with. Jason lifted his head, a faint flicker of dread crossing his features. I smiled at them all and slowly opened the box, pulling out a neatly stacked pile of printed documents. These, I said gently, are my bank transfer records for the past year. My voice remained even, almost soothing. Every month $4,000, deposited into Amanda's account. Supposedly for Tyler's education. Amanda's smirk stiffened. But she recovered quickly, letting out a derisive little laugh. Mom, you know raising kids isn't cheap. That money barely covers anything. Yeah, Shirley chimed in, her voice full of scorn. What you gave barely scratched the surface. I nodded, still smiling. You're right, I said smoothly. So, I did a little checking. Just to see where it all went. I laid out the second set of documents. Amanda's gym spending, her personal trainer receipts, high-end purchase history. I spread them across the table like a hand of cards. The room froze. Amanda's face drained of color, then flushed bright red in the blink of an eye. Shirley stared dumbly at the papers, her mouth half open, unable to process. I went on, my voice as soft and cutting as a silk thread pulled tight. An elite gym membership. Private one-on-one training sessions. Luxury weekend retreats. Amanda, are these what you call educational expenses for Tyler? Amanda shot up, knocking over her chair, lunging toward the papers. You're making things up. Jason gave me that money. Jason's head jerked up, his face twisted in shock and disbelief. I calmly pulled out the final piece. The photographs. One after another I laid them down. Amanda and the young trainer, cozy at the gym, laughing in cafes, disappearing together into luxury apartments. Susan, standing discreetly to the side, zoomed in, catching every twitch of panic on Amanda's face. Would you like, I said, reaching into my pocket, to hear a little something else? I clicked play on the recorder. Amanda's voice spilled into the room, sickly sweet. Don't worry, baby. That old hag's clueless. She really thinks I'm home babysitting. And then Shirley's unmistakable mocking tone. Milk her dry, honey. Better we spend it now than let some stranger enjoy it when she croaks. Each word sliced deeper than the last. Jason's face turned ghost white. His fingers dug into the tablecloth so hard his knuckles blanched. He stared at Amanda like she was a stranger he'd never met before. Amanda panicked, shrieking as she grabbed at Jason. Jason, he's lying. He set me up. You can't believe her. Enough, Amanda. Jason shoved her away so hard she stumbled backward, shock and rage flashing across her pale, desperate face. And finally, Shirley, the woman who had always carried herself with such shrill arrogance, seemed to realize the tides had turned. She slammed her palm against the table with a sharp crack, shrieking, Helen Brooks. You vile old woman. How dare you set up my daughter? How dare you poison their marriage? I slowly lifted my head, my gaze calm and fathomless, like the still surface of a deep lake. Shirley, I said, my voice as quiet as it was lethal. Every photo, every recording, every receipt, it's all fact. If this family has been torn apart, it was by your own hands, not mine. Shirley's face burned crimson. She jabbed her finger at me, spitting fury. You'll die alone, you miserable hag. Once Amanda leaves, Jason will never forgive you for this. You'll regret it. Amanda, not to be outdone, shrieked, her voice shrill and cracking. Exactly. You've always hated me. You've always wanted to come between us. Their shrieking filled the room like the howling of stray dogs. And yet, inside me there was nothing but icy clarity. I turned to Jason. His face was a battlefield of exhaustion and grief. When I spoke, my voice was softer now, but each word carried an immovable force. Jason, I said, from this day forward I will no longer fund these parasites. And I will no longer sacrifice myself for the illusion of peace. My pension, my house, my future, they belong to me. Jason's lips parted as if he wanted to say something. He looked at Amanda, her face twisted with fury, then back at me, meeting the steady, unyielding calm in my eyes. Finally he closed his eyes. When he opened them again, it was with a weariness and a grim resolve I had never seen before. After a long moment he drew a shaky breath and said hoarsely, "Mom, I understand." He turned toward Amanda and there was no love left in his gaze, only cold, irrevocable disappointment. "Amanda," he said quietly, "I want a divorce." The words struck the room like a hammer. Amanda jerked violently, her face contorting in horror. He shrieked, "No, you can't. Jason, if you divorce me, I swear, you'll never see Tyler again." Jason's eyes shuttered closed briefly. When he spoke, his voice was steel. "I'll fight for custody through the court. And as for you," he looked her up and down with icy finality, "get ready to face the consequences." Amanda lunged at him, sobbing and screaming. Shirley screeched from the sidelines, throwing her own tantrum. The room devolved into chaos. And I simply stood there, still and silent, watching the end of a tragedy that had been inevitable for a very long time. Susan quietly captured it all through the lens of her camera, steady and relentless. Karen, notebook in hand, calmly jotted down her observations. Every word, every action meticulously documented. I moved to the table, gathered the scattered documents into a neat stack and said low and steady, This is the harvest of the seeds you planted yourselves." Then I scooped Tyler into my arms, holding him gently against my chest. "Don't be afraid, little one," I whispered, stroking his back. "Grandma's here." Tyler blinked up at me, bewildered, his wide eyes darting between the screaming adults and my calm face. Instinctively, he tucked himself tighter into my embrace. Holding him close, I turned away from the wreckage behind me and walked toward my room without a backward glance. Behind me echoed Amanda and Shirley's desperate, furious howls, Jason's broken, resolute breaths, and the soft, steady clicks of Susan's camera capturing the final collapse of all their lies. Every mask, every pretense, every carefully painted illusion, shattered into dust in that moment, without mercy, without repair. After the day of reckoning, the tension inside the house stretched taut like a fraying wire, one tug away from snapping. Amanda and Shirley were in full-blown panic. They had thought that by throwing tantrums and playing the victim, they could still bully me into submission. But this time I didn't even look their way. I cut off every penny of household support, halted all transfers to their accounts, and changed the locks on the house, revoking any spare keys they might have had. Legally, the house was now solely under my name. I didn't respond to their shouting, didn't bother with the vicious rumors they spread throughout the neighborhood. Instead, I quietly contacted Karen, my lawyer, and set the next stage of my plan into motion. Jason, since that afternoon, had fallen into a deep, grim silence. He moved back into his small room, spending long nights hunched over the dining table, sorting through divorce paperwork and custody documents. Sometimes, passing through the kitchen, I would hear him murmuring under his breath, "How did it come to this? What about Tyler?" I was such a fool. I never interrupted him. This was a journey he had to walk himself. I had already done all I could. Amanda, of course, wasn't about to go down quietly. She started throwing tantrums at home, smashing things, crying and screaming one minute, raging and threatening the next. Every other day she would show up outside Jason's office building, causing scenes, begging, cursing, doing anything to make him change his mind. Shirley wasn't far behind. She prowled the neighborhood, spinning new lies, claiming I was mentally unstable, that I manipulated Jason, that I had destroyed their marriage. She even threatened to rally the neighbors to file formal complaints against me. What they didn't realize was, through Susan, I had already quietly contacted the school and the local community social workers. Tyler's repeated lack of supervision had been documented and filed months ago. I submitted all the evidence. Amanda's reckless spending, the school reports of Tyler left unattended, and even the photos and proof of her affair. When Jason officially filed for divorce, he also filed a motion for primary custody of Tyler. The court summoned all parties swiftly. Amanda and Shirley, enraged and flailing, found themselves pinned against a mountain of irrefutable proof. The more they shrieked, the more pathetic and vicious they appeared. On the day of the first divorce hearing, I accompanied Jason to the courthouse. Amanda showed up in a gaudy, outdated designer suit, her face caked in makeup, radiating barely suppressed hysteria. Shirley hovered beside her, her face twisted in rage. Jason, dressed in a sober dark suit, looked pale but resolute. When it was his turn to speak, he rose to his feet. His voice trembled slightly, but his words rang clear and unwavering. I admit that in the past I failed to defend my marriage properly. But I will not. I will not continue to allow my mother's money to fund someone who has lied, betrayed, and endangered our child's safety. I am requesting full custody of my son, and I am asserting my rightful claim to our family's assets. Amanda tried to interrupt, only to be yanked back down by her own lawyer. Her face twisted with fury, her eyes burning with hatred. I sat there, silent, watching the scene unfold with a strange ache in my chest, an ache mingled with profound relief. Jason had finally stood up. On the way home he walked beside me, head bowed. As we approached the front steps he suddenly stopped. "Mom," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I turned to look at him. The autumn sunlight slanted across his face, tracing the sharp lines of exhaustion and new hard-won strength. He looked like a boy again, a boy who had finally broken free of a crushing weight, his eyes shimmering with remorse and raw emotion. He choked out, "All these years, I thought if I just tolerated everything we could stay together as a family, but I was wrong. You taught me something I should have learned a long time ago. Respect doesn't come from surrender." I placed my hand gently on his shoulder, my voice warm and steady. "It's all right, Jason. The moment you face the truth, it's never too late." I tilted my head back and looked up at the sky. Sunlight filtered through the branches of the old oak trees, casting golden nets across the sidewalk. And deep inside me, something that had been wound tight for so long, finally began to loosen, finally began to breathe free. The day the final verdict came down, San Francisco's sky was stunningly clear. I sat quietly in the courtroom gallery, watching as the judge read the decision. Jason was awarded primary custody of Tyler. Amanda, due to infidelity, financial misconduct, and gross negligence, was stripped of direct custodial rights and ordered to pay partial compensation. Helen Brooks, that is, me, was granted full independent ownership and control over the family home. Amanda stood at the defendant's table, her face as pale as paper. She opened her mouth as if to protest, but with the mountain of evidence stacked against her, even her lawyer sat silent, offering no defense. When the gavel struck the bench, Amanda collapsed into her seat, her carefully painted face smearing into a tear-streaked mess. Shirley stomped and shrieked beside her, screaming about appeals, vowing to take it to the media. But no one paid her any attention. Even the women of the neighborhood, the ones she used to manipulate so easily, had turned away from her. Once friendly faces now crossed the street to avoid her. When we returned to the community that afternoon, I saw it for myself. Shirley stood at the entrance, pulling at neighbors, shouting and pleading. "It's her. She ganged up on us. You have to help us." But the neighbors simply offered awkward smiles, quickly pulling away from her grip, walking off without even looking back. I overheard soft whispers as I passed. "Did you hear? Her daughter was caught cheating with a trainer, and stealing from her own family. Who would want to get involved?" Shirley, shaking with rage, exploded into a foul-mouthed tirade, standing there like a mad dog snapped loose from its leash. Me. I simply walked past her. Without a glance. Without a word. As if walking past a puddle of filthy water. Not long after, Amanda received her formal court notice. She was ordered to vacate all property tied to Jason within 15 days, including all furniture, appliances, and accounts purchased with my financial support. She was to leave with nothing. Not a cent. Shirley naturally refused to accept defeat. She scrambled to rally old acquaintances, trying to pull emotional favors, hoping to negotiate some private settlement for Amanda. But I had already locked down every loophole through my lawyer. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Now get out. That was Karen's final message attached to the official legal papers. Short, merciless, and devastatingly precise. On the day Amanda moved out, I stood at the window, watching as she struggled with a few battered suitcases, slamming the door behind her with a rage she could no longer disguise. Shirley trailed after her, swearing and sobbing. I stayed at the window, silent. The sunlight fell across my hands, warm and steady. And I knew this long, suffocating nightmare had finally ended. Later that evening, Jason and Tyler came over for dinner. Tyler, grinning, chattered happily about school between bites of roasted chicken wings. Jason ate quietly, occasionally glancing at me, his eyes heavy with guilt and gratitude. Halfway through the meal he set down his knife and fork and said, his voice low and rough, "Mom, thank you." I shook my head and smiled gently. "There's no need to thank me," I said softly. "You found your way out. That courage was yours." Outside, the night unfurled softly, the orange glow of the streetlights casting gentle pools of light along the garden path. I lifted my cup of warm tea and took a slow, steady sip. And in that moment I finally understood. Dignity in old age isn't something given by your children. It isn't bought through patience or sacrifice. Something you reclaim for yourself. Piece by piece, step by step. By standing your ground. By holding your head high. By freeing your heart of every unnecessary burden.